Alexander Eliot, a mythologist and scholar of Joseph Campbell, declared that the realm from which stories and dreams originate was called the myth dimension. All humans have a connection to this dimension. We draw power from the stories, become the heroes, and escape to fantastical realms. We visit it when we sleep or when we daydream, when we brainstorm, when we see a peculiar cloud shape or a painting of a land that does not exist, when we see a movie or read a book. These stories come to us and inspire us in different ways, but all stories come from the myth dimension. In the Myth Dimension podcast, two writers cover the inner workings and quality of stories straight from the mouth of the myth dimension. In this episode, we cover Dungeons & Dragons, short stories, and books from our childhood with special guest, Shea Cunha. Alright, joined here today with Shea Cunha.
Real quick, it is just Shea, so there's no N in there, just Shea.
Oh, Shea, sorry.
I get it all the time, no worries at all, but I'd hate to have the first 3 seconds be it said.
No, just, yeah. Thank you, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. You run the Readio Podcast, right?
I do, yes.
Mm-hmm. How did you get, so you said that you got started, you just basically decided on the bus one day to kick it off. You were listening to all of these podcasts already, and you thought, I could probably do better than these guys.
Well, maybe not outdo them, but certainly getting inspired by things I'm already interested in and seeing all these people have are a microphone, basic editing software, and something to do it about. And if I have those 2 things, if I can find that last one, I have a show. And I figured why not start on it that day? And I did.
What really grabbed you about short stories in particular? Because you can make a podcast about anything, but what about reading short stories really caught your attention?
Probably their sampleability. I feel like listening to anything for a long time can sort of drag on, but if you have some sort of a sampling platter version of audio, it's easier to pick up and put down. I've listened to multiple Dungeons & Dragons podcasts, but I've had to put a couple down just because I don't like where the Dungeon Master's going, or I don't like how things are a bit monotonous sometimes. I'm not as committed as I would be if I could sit down one day, start to finish, listen for an hour, get a whole story arc, and then feel fulfilled.
I feel the same way. I usually listen to Critical Role, but what I do is I'll listen to Critical Role's highlight reel rather than the entire session, because the entire session can go like upwards of 4 hours sometimes.
Yeah, that's smart.
Don't have the time for that, really. Like I don't know. I'll get distracted. I don't feel like, especially paying attention for 4 hours, I'll miss something. So if I just get like the good bite-sized pieces out of that game, then I still have the same like satisfaction, and I still feel the fun of it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Totally understand that bit.
So what about Dungeons & Dragons then? Where did you start with that?
Oh man, I probably around 12 years old. I think that just being in an environment where podcasts are so prevalent, and hey, you should check this out. This is a cool thing. I had never seen D&D before, but I got shown the Campaign podcast, which was a Star Wars Edge of the Empire role-playing system.
Oh, fantastic.
Which involves successes and advantages versus threats and failures, which is still, I think, my favorite system, because it doesn't revolve around numbers versus numbers. It's all quantitative versus qualitative, qualitative versus quantitative. So you just count up the pluses versus the minuses, you take it away. And you compare the advantages to the threats. So if you succeed with 2 threats, that means maybe you're trying to pick a lock and you succeed in picking the lock, but it breaks and hits the ground and someone notices. So it leaves a lot of narrative room, which is my favorite thing, is just going off the fly, twisting the situation, and suddenly everyone's in on it, and it's a new scene. But,
definitely when I'm like being a DM for my group, I usually try and take the critical failures or critical successes as how can I tell this story the best way? Like rather than like making this the you instantly do the best thing possible. Like, what's the most entertaining, spectacular way to do this? You know,
For
because
sure.
however, like it will be a fail or will be a success, but there needs to be a memorable moment. Like if you manage to roll that very very rare, critical 20, then you need to feel like that moment is special. So if you
Absolutely.
just instantly kill the bad guy and there's no payoff, but then instead you do some very satisfying roundabout way
Yes.
to kill him instead of just outright doing it, then it becomes something that you talk about for years onward.
Definitely. I prefer cinematic rewards or narrative
Yes,
rewards
yeah,
compared to stat blocks or anything like that.
agreed.
If it looks nice and is fulfilling to the situation you're in, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
I'd much rather have that than, all right, great, you cut his head off, and next. It's just, there's so much potential there that's just thrown away if you don't take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. There's a sort of gap in storytelling, especially when it comes to missed plot points, because sometimes there will be a climax, but it'll be in the wrong setting, or there'll be a like a missed chance to do something where there's like all of these plot points culminating, or like lines of storytelling that are coming up to fruition, and then once that game altering moment happens, sometimes it gets wasted, and I really hate seeing that.
Absolutely. That's why I like not putting too much weight on big decisions or actions like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just move on if it doesn't go well and wait for another crit, either way. Or just good narrative decisions are really, really rewarded in my party.
Mm-hmm.
Inspiration points go a long way. Just outthinking me and
Mm-hmm.
thinking that, yeah, you know what? Let's see the antagonist word for word what he requested, see how we can twist it, and then we profit. So good. I love it.
Yeah. How do you decide when to place those plot points, and what kind of storytelling do you do?
I guess it comes back to how I prepare a session.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't like to do word for word, scene by scene. I like to propose an event to the party and see where they go.
Hmm.
Um, I know that I was happy with how I did this for pretty early on in my party's life. Really,
Mm-hmm.
I had a traveling magician come to town, and he
Hmm.
had he had like these banners on the back of the cart, and had two assistants with him that were wearing masks, white cloth everywhere, and he was explaining how he could easily pass on the elderly if they were in pain, if they were sick, if they were dying. He could make it so their family could still live with their presence. And that was his whole pitch was I can take the essence of your relatives and bring them into a more suitable vessel. Like I can put them into a family pet so you may have your relative around longer. And
Hmm.
it's so uncanny. It's like, oh, maybe this is disgusting, but if the populace likes it, then maybe it's not all bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I just had this magician walk in with Soul Jar and just keep doing that to a couple people in town. And the party was saying, like, do we stop him? What more do we do to this? Is there something more to it than him just taking their money, whatever it is? And depending on what actions and measures they took to find out about it, I would invest my time there and say, okay, great. They want to look into his reason for being here, and I'll devise some BBEG, some big bad in the background that may have sent him there, whatever it is. And
Mm-hmm.
then they find a tracking ring in the cart. That's strange. How'd that get in there? And now that's the MacGuffin. They have to go find someone to see what the ring does and everything like that. So definitely improv based with an event focus.
I see. Yeah, I think the one thing that's more polarizing than one extremely evil or extremely good character is a morally gray moment where you're not
Yes.
sure where to go with it. I remember my DM, the person that I play for, in the last campaign that he did, the end of the campaign, the final session, the biggest climax, we were all gearing up for this massive fight against this powerful foe, and it was the Pillars of Dawn, our group, versus him, the classic BBEG, and we went into the room, and instead he was like, wait, I have an offer for you. And he ran us through an offer that it was a moment where we had to decide whether we would want to stick with the Pillars of Dawn, this, huge good army thing against the darkness, or to join them in his fight. It turns out that he's more of a anti-hero than a complete evil guy, because he was pointing out all of the things that the Pillars of Dawn had been doing along the way that were actually bad. Things that our party had been doing along the way that were not actually as good as we said that we were. And he had been tracking this the entire way for like half of a year, and he spilled it out all in front of us. He was like, "Are you sure that this is the so good organization that you joined up for? Is this actually what you want to do?" In the entire session that lasted like 2 hours, no fighting was done. The entire thing was us legitimately discussing, do we stay or do we go?
Wow.
And
oh my god.
Yeah. And it was like all of our minds were blown. It lasted until the next day. We wanted to do the next session the next day. We were thinking about it all night, even after the session ended. Came back, and then we gave all of our things. My 2 friends had gone into a secret call and had sworn an oath to each other that, like, we don't know who the bad guy is anymore. I know that you're good. You know that I'm good. We're the only 2 people that we can trust right now. No matter what happens, we're going to stay with the Dawn, fight against this guy, but we're going to keep this in mind. So they did theirs. They stick with the Dawn. There was one who was like daughter of the general of the Dawn, who of course sticked with the Dawn, even though she had like some like weird connection with the bad guy. And my character was like, I didn't really this is one I joined up for, and he has a really good point. Like, we haven't done a lot of good shit. We're just doing hunting and killing. Like, we're not. There's no goodness about it. And so I ended up joining with the bad guys. Wow. And then there was a little bit of a fight. The bad guy fled. We all like teleported away out of there. And then like the fight was kind of done, and they were just left sitting there like, well, shit. Like, the fight was like 15 minutes, but the entire event was a day or more.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, fantastic storytelling.
I love using magical items as inspiration, just because I like the variability, specifically Wands of Wonder or the Wild Magic Table, because you roll a d100 and you get a random effect. There's so much room there for anything. So I gave my party a bag of beans, which
all right, explain what that does, because
a bag of beans is essentially a bag with magical beans in it, as the name suggests. But when you throw the bean, when you plant the bean, according to the word of the rules, it grows and leaves a special effect. After you roll a d100, it's determined what that number correlates to on the table. But I had it more tabletop or table ruled into that. If you throw it, the effect happens. I'm not into staring at it for a day as something happens. So my team finished a fight, defeating a few hags in their coven, and the druid had said, well, now that we've defeated the hags, we can throw the bean and see what happens. We can move on from this and celebrate whatever it is. And as they rolled, they got, I forget what number they got, but it resulted in just a tree growing. Like, oh, this is great. It's an apple. Like, it's an apple tree. They have magical properties. This is wonderful. It must be positive. And then they didn't understand that they could roll poorly on that table. And when they tried again, they created a giant pyramid about 3 miles from a giant city.
Oh, no.
And that pyramid held a mummy lord inside and created the environment around it to be arid and deserted. So it destroyed a forest. The entire environment of the city pretty much looked over is now just sand with a giant pyramid on it. You're like, okay, well, we'll get back to this. Trust us. We're gonna go. We're gonna do some other quests, and we'll solve this later.
We're just gonna leave this here for a bit.
Sounds good. CR17 Mummy Lord in there. Just gonna stew for a while, and I'm sure this won't affect the city at all. So they went out and what is it? Oh, they fixed an unjust government in the West, and when they came back, the city was mostly deserted in more ways than one. but it was beautiful. I like how I did that pyramid too.
Oh man.
The way they did the way I set up the Mummy Lord is he was the spirit of an old gambler that used to take advantage of peasants who didn't know how odds worked, and would
Ooh.
and then it in turn kill them, take their life force, become a lich, died. So
Mm-hmm.
Mummy Lord sort of twisted into a different archetype. But as soon as they entered the pyramid, they had them all explain who they were, why they're there, and like, you won't be touching my property. The treasure in this is mine. If you wish if you wish to step inside my crypt, you must all sacrifice something worldly, physical, or mental. And you're like, oh, I don't want to lose something before I even go in there. What the heck? So this was a level 5, level 4 party, so not too weak. But
Mm-hmm.
if they chose something physical, they would lose 3 strength, 3 con, and 3 dex, which is nothing to sneeze at. That is a good bit of stats out the window while
Yeah.
you're in here. If they chose worldly, they would lose a magical item of the most importance. If they chose mental, which none of the players did, I would have come up with something on the spot. I had a few NPCs with them that I
Mm-hmm.
was controlling, so if they didn't take mental, I could, you know, show them what it would do. So at that point, one of my players said, "Oh, okay, I'll take physical twice, and then our cleric doesn't have to lose anything." And I was like, "Hell yeah! Oh, this mummy lord would be so happy with someone losing twice as much. This is great. Like, this is perfect. I'm going to give you a point of inspiration." So absolutely, you get rewarded for thinking outside the box and taking 2 hits, so your healer doesn't have to, sacrifice anything. It was wonderful.
I think I usually do homebrew magic items. I do use some magic items that are like pre-made or a homebrew, but I
Mhm.
generally I like to think up the ones and then I can build them into my story and into my world. And the way that I usually do magical items is that I give them out in a way that lets me tell more about my story and my world. I do a lot of
Mhm.
world building for my stories. So when I get a chance to kind of show that off and to make the world feel like it has a huge history before you came along, it makes it
Mhm.
so much more interesting. One way that I did this was that so there were 4 kingdoms that were along this coast. It was basically like this huge circular island, or continent rather. In the middle, it was this big gray area of a forest. It was very archaic, old. No one went in. No one really came out. It was just like you
Mhm.
left it. You left it alone. You lived in your kingdom. After a while, the forest started acting up. There would be like tree ants, dryads, weird creatures would come crawling out, raid a village, slaughtering, and then like they didn't really know why. And there was this sort of message passed along through druids who communicated to try and find out what was happening, that there was a big, oh God, what did I call it? The primeval alder or the prometheal alder, I think, which was this huge tree in the center of the forest that was giving life to all of the forest, because the kingdoms were, using so much like magic and extracting the energy from the forest and then like littering, cutting down trees. It was damaging the forest, weakening the forest, hurting the forest, and so they saw that as like a breach of the treaty that
Mhm.
you stay away. So Corey Dallas, the dryad who protected the prometheal alder, got very angry, waged war on all of humankind. The 4 kingdoms selected their 4 mightiest champions to go forth and to hunt down the Corey Dallas, defeat her, save the forest, save the kingdoms. On the way, about halfway, they found an abandoned kingdom that was completely overgrown. The entire place was in ruins. Very few buildings were actually intact. They went through the marketplace, and I had 2 instances because they split up to explore this very large marketplace. One player group went into a barber shop that was beside a blacksmithery. In
Mhm.
the blacksmithery, they didn't find any weapons or armor. Really, all of that had been looted in the barber shop. There was, like a comb and then some like tonic and like maybe a pair of scissors. One character picked up comb, stroked his hair, and then the hair grew longer. It was a comb of beardmancy. I believe there was also, I don't remember where they found it to. It might have been in the castle or it might have been in the marketplace. But they also found a helmet that was could speak. It was completely sentient. It was aware of the passage of time. It knew a lot about history, which again, like a little expositional device that I put in there.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, basically just like an iron helmet that just like gave a little bit of backstory as to what this kingdom was. The kingdom of Chibi, what had happened to it. No one has ever been here for like 1,000 years or so, and they're like, "Huh, that's very strange. Is there a bar nearby?" In classic D&D fashion. I said yes. They went in. There were these bottles lined up with labels they had never seen before. They drank all of them. It is, of course, was nothing they've ever tasted. It was probably one of the best liquors they've ever had as well. And so they're like, fantastic. Empty out your backpack, fill all of them up. And so, like, the dwarf and the big, like, paladin guy that we had were just, like, hoarding this entire thing. Chadwick, the bigger warrior, walked over, picked up a keg off of the ground. The keg came to life as a keg golem, and then they fought a couple of barrels. Yeah.
Wow.
And as they traversed the thing, they realized that there was a very, very powerful spell that was laid over the kingdom, or probably, I would say, 1 in 2, like 50% of the items were sentient, could talk to some degree. Some were a little bit slower, some were a lot more mentally capable. And like all of the items in the city began erupting. They're like, "They're here! There's people here! Pick me! Pick me!" And they were just being yelled at by like hats and shoes and bricks.
Oh my
and
goodness.
Yeah, and they were like finally got to the castle, and the dwarf in our party realized that this castle belonged to his great grandfather. And as they walked the halls, it became like a history trip as it revealed more and more of his backstory and where he came from. And as they went down, they found a dragon. Had that whole thing, which was a mess inside of itself. I don't even know how to describe it, but yeah, it was just like using those like little points along the way to reveal more world story, and then like that was a considerable portion of the campaign. And even though they went on and did other things, I was still like that kingdom was always in their mind as a place they wanted to return to.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Man,
I love little hidden things like that where they take actions. Oh, this can't be anything but good. The DM wouldn't plan anything nefarious. Or
they don't trust me anymore.
Yeah, of course, never trust the DM. Hey, caution! If you're an adventurer living in a magical land, don't take action carelessly. I think that's just safe to assume. Getting in character takes time, but I mean, I'm a DM that tries to make sure their characters get awareness pretty quick. So
that's another advantage that DMs have, actually. I just realized another advantage that DMs have is with role playing, you develop character voices really quick, which in storytelling is essential, because if all of your characters sound identical, you get bored really quick. But if all of them sound like different speech patterns, different accents, different like histories, I usually try and switch it up so that each character sounds individual from one another.
Definitely. That's the dream. My the rogue NPC that I had traveling with the group going to the Mummy Lord, he's the one who sacrificed Mental. I had introduced him as this like self-centered, focused, out for nothing but himself, classic, pretty much the edgiest rogue I could think of. Like that was his whole archetype was I don't need anyone but myself. Get away from me. Like all that, like I can do it alone. You don't understand. And as soon as he sacrificed to Mental, he talked like this and was a bit more careful and never the first one, or more often the first one to go in. I don't want my friends to be injured. And he looked the same. He acted a little bit the same, but he spoke his whole the way he acted in terms of self-sacrificially so his friends don't get injured, and I appreciate all you do for me. I don't think I've said that enough. It's like, Ribston, where did you go? We want our edgy boy back. It was really, really fun to give that to the party, because if they took Mental, something would have changed. And the alignment might have been modified or something like that.
With Mandahar, the character I just most recently played, the one that I gave over to the Dark Lord, basically, he had, I think it was 8 intelligence. And
Oh,
so, yeah, no matter what I rolled or like what I did, I tried to make it so that he didn't really think ahead. Like
sure.
he didn't do that much thinking with his 8 intelligence, and that really gave him a bunch of flavor for, you know, character building and role play because
Yes,
everyone in my game was like, all right, we're not going to let Mandahar know about this just in case. Because
for sure.
a complete wild card with, like, it was fantastic.
Flaws are flaws are the mother or father of improv. It allows you to
Yes.
just go off of so much. Low int means you can be careless and not
Hmm.
get punished for it because that means your strength and con are better. So you can, you're adaptable. It's so good. Having even stats is it's such a missed opportunity in my eyes.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Sometimes if I'm like really pressed and I don't have the creative fortitude to flesh out a character, I'll just roll them. And
Totally.
then if
Yep.
I yeah, and then like that would help it helps me gauge or give like a kind of a scale as to what I want the character to be. Because if I
Hmm.
roll too low on intelligence, then and I feel kind of like then I know that I want the character to be more intelligent, and then sometimes I
Yeah,
just don't care, and then it becomes another character in of itself for when
for
I'm
sure.
writing those stories. I agree with the flaw
Definitely.
bit though. If you don't have flaws in your characters, if you don't write in even flaws in the world, it makes everything feel a lot less human, even if your characters aren't
Yes.
human. Like, you need to have those, like, I would say there's like 2 levels. There's like, like insecurities, like small little flaws, things that you can usually change or have an effect on, and then there are
Hmm.
very like deep seated flaws, like really like backdoor stuff
Yeah.
that yeah, and like both of those will help a character navigate through their world, and then having those deep-seated ones where you don't really know why they're making that choice but you feel like it's because of something, it helps so much more with building the character depth, and then it
Yes.
becomes something that you want to interact with, you want to know more, and it becomes a world to explore in itself.
Absolutely. Having fears or inherent weaknesses that can be exploited or referenced or just, they can just exist. So it adds tension. Anything that allows you to think on your feet better.
Mm-hmm.
The Dragonborn fighter in our group is afraid of subterranean environments because he was a miner and it caved in on him and he was stuck there for a while.
Ooh.
So in that pyramid where they had to go down a very deep staircase and the
Oh
pressure built
yeah.
and built and built, he was starting taking disadvantage on combat checks. So he was like acting on a delay or too jittery or something. And that adds a little bit of flavor that just makes it a perfect scene where you're in an empty dark room, the floor is sand, there doesn't seem to be anything in here, but the pressure is in your head and you
Mm-hmm.
hate being underground. And now you're in character. And now you're like, oh, you're there.
Mm-hmm.
You can apply a fear to yourself to get yourself thinking as your character would and taking more realistic actions so they can be more realistic. I just appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. I think when it comes to storytelling, identifying and becoming your character when you're speaking for them is probably a good way to develop voice and style. And it's
Yep.
also definitely a good way to make sure that your character is making the choices that they would actually make. Because I've even encountered this when I write, is that sometimes I'll write out an ending or some scenario that happens, and then I reread it and I'm like, okay, for the story so far they've been on this track, nothing has really happened that would change that, so making this is actually out of character for them to do. So like becoming the character and really knowing what your character voice is helps so much with like everything from dialogue to huge plot point decisions, like things that would make or break an entire story.
Definitely. That's
If
why
you,
I don't like writing endings ahead of time. I only make characters and environments that are hopefully alive enough to be manipulated to then come to a conclusion on their own.
Mhm.
Definitely, that's my preferred route.
Have you ever had a bad D&D experience? Like, did everything anything ever happen that
Man.
was like a session just like, all right, we're just gonna end it here. Yeah, we're all done for a while.
Oh man, I am very happy to say that nothing at the table has led to that.
Nothing.
Nope, definitely not.
Wow.
I've been very fortunate to have good role playing friends. Sometimes off table drama gets in the way, and that can
Mm,
lead to tension.
yep.
But it, it's all in stride. You got to adapt and move on. Find a new group if necessary, and learn what was good about the last one, and import that. And there's definitely a lot to learn in anything where you're working with other people, and especially with something as intimate as I'm going to be speaking in the first person about some fantasy character that I designed and think is interesting.
Hmm.
And if you're talking with strangers about that, it really is hard to take the first step. But yeah, some experiences where off-table events can lead to I don't appreciate what you did with X, Y, and Z, and we still have 6 hours. Like we're all at this house for until about noon tomorrow, and it's 8 p.m. So what are we gonna do? You got to learn to either put it behind you for the time there, or fix the problem.
Yeah. I don't think I've had any like purely bad D&D sessions. Like ones where everything went wrong, and then it just put
Mhm.
like a bad note on everything. But
Yep.
definitely, like, outside things have happened that have influenced the campaign. That's definitely a factor.
Mhm.
Um, I do agree. Like, because I have been on D&D trips before, where we'll block out like a weekend or like a day or two to do
Mhm.
nothing but D&D, and it's very easy to get sidetracked, distracted,
Oh
or
man.
have like something else happen that just puts like it's hard to go back to role playing if you're thinking about something else, or if you're mad at this person in real life, then role playing in games becomes kind of wonky.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. How did you with your podcast, when you're reading the short stories, what
Yes.
is like the gauge, like what to you stands out as a good short story? Do you pre-read them? Are you recommended them? Where do you find them?
Because I'm pretty early in starting out,
Mm-hmm.
first I've been through just friends, and then the fourth episode actually, well, friends or friends of friends, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not gonna turn anyone away if they put time into something and wrote it either for the show or just I spent a whole week writing this thing and I really like how it comes out. I'll pre-read it, and I haven't found anything that has been too abhorrent to put on the show. So I do have in the outro like don't like send anything you want. If you've written something or know someone who has, email it to me and I'll happily read it on the show. If I don't even say any like disclaimer, but like if I think it's good, I'll just sort of say it'll be on the show if you send stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
But the fourth episode is Black Magic by Catherine LaCroix, and I met her through doing narrations on Audible,
Hmm.
and it just a few weeks ago, actually, just under a month ago, and I did work for her. That's hopefully going to be up soon. But she wrote this story and said, "Hey, like, would you be interested in having me write an exclusive show, an exclusive piece for just this podcast? How does that sound?" And I was like, "Oh, a real author that does nothing but write for a living for me? Sounds great, Catherine. I would love to take you up on this offer."
Yeah.
So that's episode 4, which has just felt the most gratifying. Is just all I'm offering is a platform, and if someone appreciates that to the point of, yeah, I'll write something for you, no worries. It's felt very amazing to have this opportunity for sure.
Do you find yourself leaning towards one kind of short story, or do you like what kind of short stories do you really like? Do you read them in your spare time and then not upload them, or do you usually read them just for work?
Oh gosh, for work. This is a hobby, and I'm keeping it at that
Yeah.
until if or whatever happens to it. I just do it because it's fun, and if someone finds me through it, then oh, I like your show.
Hmm.
That's the world to me. I just appreciate when people appreciate work or
Hmm.
hobby, not
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
But I do I do have a very big soft spot for surrealism or like magic or like low fantasy realism, I'm a sucker for it.
Hmm.
Um, it just having a having an environment where everything's the same. Oh, except this person knows how to cast spells and no one else does. It's like, oh wow, like there's so much that can be revealed there, and looks like the basement of this tavern is having some human sacrifices, but don't forget, like, can't go to the tavern because it's prohibition and all that. Just the dichotomy of fantasy that no one knows about in a real environment that we think we knew everything about is really amazing to me. I uh I do like horror that isn't, terrifying. I like low stakes horror where it's
Mhm.
tense and that's really it. I don't like much body horror. I don't like much when it
Mm.
comes to just excessive violence in that medium. I just appreciate a well-written story by any means. And that's really my biggest requirement is that people took time to write it. As long as it wasn't discarded and full of typos and yeah,
Yeah.
sure, this is cool. As long as someone wanted to do it and did it out of passion and wants to do it, then yes,
Yeah, I
I
agree.
like it.
Yeah. I really appreciate when work ethic comes into play, when somebody really
Mhm.
like, because especially for like as a writer and as an author and all of my writer friends, when you do something that's, even if it's as short as 2 pages long,
Yes.
it can become your love child really quick. Like it
Yeah.
can become something that you're so passionate about, and like it's actually funny. A lot of writing circles are very critical and they're very upfront. Like, I think this is garbage. You're hot garbage. Don't pursue this as a career, please.
Wow.
And because you get so personal to your work, sometimes that can
Mhm.
really hurt. So finding a good writing circle where you can put forward a piece is like daunting at best. So
Mhm.
having people that will send you short stories to be read aloud, that's really impressive. Like, that's very, I mean, like, the courage to do that. I don't know if I'll ever do that. That sounds very scary, I'm not gonna lie. Do you have you ever read The Prince of Neither Here Nor There by
I have
Sean Cullen?
not.
All
No, I
right.
haven't even heard of it.
On the topic of low fantasy realism, because again, that is also my bread and butter.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't think you're from Canada, are you?
Nope. Northeast United States.
Right. Yeah, I'm in Canada right now, and The Prince of Neither Here Nor There was written by, I think he's comedian Sean Cullen, and it's about this kid in Toronto. It's all set in Toronto. It's all like a like realistic setting. I've been to the streets and the like landmarks that he's mentioned in the books. Of like taking a
Wow.
day trip there. It's fantastic. It's about this kid who, while I haven't read it in a long time, but somehow he stumbles upon this sort of secret hidden society of fairies and elves that are living just beneath the surface. And they have this
Perfect.
like magical mist that kind of hides them, but like all of their small little inner workings are throughout the city, and it's just like just enough to find them. And like then
Wow.
he gets like caught up and tumbled into this whole like problem, because the fairies know that like he's supposed to be human, but somehow he's half fairy, and they're trying to figure out how this happened. And then like this evil witch comes in and she's trying to like hunt him down, and they're like trying to hide him, but no, he's human, so he can't be here. And like yeah, the whole story just kicks off, and it's like that. I think it's actually a series. I think there's a few books. I only own the first one.
Huh. The Prince of Neither Here Nor I will certainly check that out.
Yeah, another favorite of mine, Artemis Fowl, if you've ever read that.
Oh man, that was my childhood and a
Yes.
half.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh God, with a movie coming out in like a month, I've been like, it's been on my mind every day, and I'm trying to get all of my friends to read it so we can go watch the movie.
High stakes, live up to the nostalgia, or else
God, I know.
nothing can. I'm trying to ground
I
myself
know,
and
I
say, you
know
know
it's, I
what?
know it's not gonna be, but like I saw, what's his name, Josh Gad as Mulch Diggums, and like that casting was so perfect, and I'm so excited.
For sure.
Oh man, there's like low fantasy stuff where there's like just enough, like
Yep.
just a little bit. Fantastic.
Yep.
Do you know about the dungeon punk genre?
No, but that's the perfect name for it. Wow.
Yeah. So
No, I've never heard of it.
I'm running a campaign that's dungeon punk right now. Basically, it's like if you took Lord of the Rings, like the medieval fantasy bit,
Of course.
yeah, and then you just sped that up, and now it's in like an industrial era. Some places do it like a steampunk kind of thing. Others do like a like 1920s kind of an era. Some do diesel punk, but it's basically like if you took Lord of the Rings and then just sped it up and advanced that society onwards to pretty much like the turn of the century.
Wow.
I'm running one right now where I've like in the world building for it is so fun because now you have airships and blimps that run on air elementals. You have trains that
Oh my
are powered by all
gosh.
of these things, and orcs are the working class, and high elves are of course like rising in society because of
Yeah.
gracefulness and all of this. And there's now there's like there's class conflicts. There's still like some racial tension between all of them. A lot of them are moving past what they used to be, but the crime, and you get this like New York City feel, but you have all of these like dwarves and elves and orcs and playing around and trying to make the world something else. So like I have elevators that run on air elementals in the fancier hotels, and a like a transit system that runs on like different kinds of elementals as like a pneumatic tube system, and that's how they do their transportation because no transportation is going to be the same. And so I've like reconfigured a world of like the 1910s 1920s turn of the century to run on all of these fantasy creatures.
That's so
It's a lot of fun.
dang. I gotta stop myself from like investing myself too much in that. I got
Yeah,
we might
it's
be
cool
having a
to think
session
about.
remotely. Oh, certainly is.
Yeah.
But might be having a session tomorrow remotely with that same party, and I'm gonna throw a big twist at him. So I gotta invest
Ooh.
more time on how I'm gonna make that happen. But
Mm-hmm.
that is so amazing. I love that so much.
Yeah. I haven't found many books that are like that. I don't think. I mean, like the movie Bright that came out with Will Smith. I think it was on
I was gonna
Netflix.
say it's something
Yeah,
like light, but you nailed it. Yeah.
yeah. It was like it's kind of like it, but not really. That one's like more sped up. I've also done one just for fun. That was like a like if I took it and like massively accelerated it, and now they're like an interplanetary species. So now like they have like space travel and stuff. They're colonizing planets,
Warhammer.
pretty much.
I see. It's all a
Yeah.
spectrum. Lord of the Rings to Warhammer. 40K that is.
Yeah, pretty much.
Dang.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, sorry. All
No
right.
worries.
Uh, let's see. Covered D&D, covered some short story stuff. Where do you? All right. Let's go with how many like books did you read as a kid? How important was stories to you growing up in the
Oh
current
man.
age?
I read a lot as a kid. Thankfully before technology got in the way, because I have not read a hard copy of anything in too long.
Me too.
Honestly. I love audio and all that, but I have not held a material book in my hands for must be around a year now. I mean, that's not counting moving stuff around in my room. But honestly, opening a book to read it has not happened in too long. I read a lot of. Oh my gosh, this is killing me. I know the name of the series, but it's not coming to me at the second. But it was a super high fantasy um story where there was this belt, and this party had to go collect all like this series of magical gems. I would say it's like collecting a bunch of magical stones without making it too close to the Avengers. It was like this belt that had 8 slots in it, and there was like an opal. That was the first one they got. Oh, I can't believe it's not
Was
coming to me right now. But
I think it's like a Kenneth Opal book that's called Opal.
it's some
I,
it might be something Chronicles. Ugh,
I'm not
but it had
sure.
a
I don't
bunch
think I've
of
ever read that
it had a
one.
lot of original monsters in it,
Hmm.
which were amazing to look at. A lot of them had proper first names. Um, there were ones that looked like people, and they could shapeshift, but they
Ooh.
had the heart on the wrong side of the chest, which is that a lot of these descriptions for these things, right when I was about 789 stuck with me for this long. So clearly it was pretty important to me.
Yeah.
But they call it something like the AI, or the AIX or something, or the Xi. But they were super mischievous, and they were like, there's this underground crime ring of them, and no one caught them because they look like people. But unless you stab them through the wrong side of the heart, and then they die, you know it was real. It's like the witch trials and all that. So you never know until you, well, never know, haha. But there was no real way to check, and that's what really interested me.
God, I really love those stories that go way beyond when you finish the book. Like for me, that was definitely like probably Percy Jackson. I was one of those kids.
Oh my gosh, yes,
Yeah.
I read all of Percy Jackson.
Yeah.
I was too proud of my Greek myth knowledge and all that.
Me too.
Classic.
Yeah, like that was that for me, where I was thinking, like I remember asking both my dad and my mom if I was adopted, despite, you know, a very, very clear blood relation. I look identical to both. And I was like, please? Like,
Yeah.
is one of you my fake parent? They're like, do you want us to be? Like, God,
I thought the same thing. I would ask teachers. I had like the Percy Jackson like monster guide. Like, if you know a person that acts like this, they might be a this in disguise. And I was like, oh, there's this mean teacher who's always getting on people to, you know, like get napkins at lunch or whatever. And it's like, do you have an affinity for like wearing leather and abusing children? And she's like, yes. You're like, you must be a harpy. Oh, jeez. It was so good.
I don't think I ever asked my teacher if she liked abusing children. That was just a given.
I mean, just listing off things that the book had referenced.
Yeah. Oh man. I
forgot about that.
Yeah, those authors definitely, like, they had such a profound effect on kids today. Like sometimes you'll come across someone and you're like, I know what kind of books you read as a kid, you know? I know exactly what you were into. Man. There was, I think Artemis Fowl was, and Percy Jackson I was definitely most big into.
Definitely.
Did you ever read, I think it was Airborne? And then it was about, I think it was a Kenneth Opel book. Airborne, and then something else. I can't remember it now. It was a trilogy back in the golden age where every book series was 3, and then you stopped at 3 books, no matter what.
No, I haven't heard of those. No.
That one, and then there was Leviathan, Behemoth, and something else. They were about, it was, I don't know if it was Cold War. I think it was like kind of like the Ottomans and stuff. It was the Ottomans had won the war, and they were like had their own empire versus like the Western world, and they had managed to. It was like a biopunk thing where they had mixed technology with living creatures, so, you know, their blimps were actual whales. They just had like, you know, like they were basically like cyborg whales, and being kept alive through technology and filled with helium gas. And it was like this whole like, this like gross biopunk thing. And depending on where you were on the European continent, they used different animals for different things in different ways. And like some of it was like really gross and made you want to call, you know, the nearest animal cruelty hotline. And other ones were like, oh, these people are okay. And it just like, speaking about like polarizing gray moments where I don't know. I just remember that one. That trilogy I haven't read in a long time.
Wow.
Man, I find it really hard to pick up a paperback book and really sit down for hours like I used to.
Yeah.
I don't know if my attention span shortened, or I just feel like I have way more time, or
I think it's just about life. And unfortunately, we have more responsibilities than we did when we were around 10. As much as I would wish the opposite were true. Not that I want to be a busy 10-year-old. As much as I wish I had the same amount of like whimsy as I did at the age, and I could just. I guess that's why I like D&D so much. Is it lets me channel something like that.
Yeah.
Some
God,
freedom to do that.
If you had the ability to do D&D when you were like an 8-year-old, what? Oh my God, that's too much power.
It
Those
is. Oh, honestly,
imagination
I
is
feel like
too
that might have
big.
hindered me. I would have
Yeah,
gotten too many bad habits. Like it would have been great,
probably.
sure, but I mean, I am where I am now. I'll be happy with that. But
Yeah.
I feel like I might not have enjoyed it as much as a kid because maybe friends around me didn't want it as much as I did, and I was the one in the wrong, so I was weird, and it was school, and I didn't want to associate myself with something like that. But it came to me when it did. What I think is for the better. I'm happy. I've taken the chances and opportunities I have.
Hmm.
Also, that book series is called Del Toro Quest. The huge
The
book series I read that I couldn't think of, Del Toro Quest, and goodness, I just looked it up. The book covers are sending me back. This is amazing.
Oh man, I
Wow.
remember.
Yeah, Del Toro Quest is absolutely amazing. Was absolutely amazing. And apparently there's an anime based on it, so I gotta get on that now. Oh
Oh man.
gosh.
Yeah.
That too would be a dream. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Just voiceover at all, voice acting, anything like that is absolutely my dream. And D&D is a great way to keep it close to home and
Yeah.
make it a
Practice.
character. Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly.
All right. Well, I mean, thank you for coming on. I really hope that
Absolutely.
you have good luck with your podcast. I'll link it down below in all of the video descriptions.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
And thanks for having me. Really, really had fun.
Yeah, I would love to have you back another time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Myth Dimension podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment what do you think we should cover next. Check us out at storiesfromthemythdimension.com for more content, and Stories from the Myth Dimension on Instagram for writing tips. Thank you for joining us on our exploration of the Myth Dimension.